The doors of the Grand Assembly Hall slid open, and Ambassador Yuna Kim walked in with her head held high. Behind her followed 3 other humans, their footsteps echoing in the massive chamber. Around them, hundreds of alien delegates from 47 different civilizations turned to watch. Some whispered. Others laughed quietly. A few did not bother to hide their contempt at all. Yuna had expected this. She had been coming to the Galactic Council for 15 years, and the reaction was always the same. To these ancient species, humanity was nothing more than a child stumbling into a room full of adults. They had lived for thousands of years. They had built empires that spanned entire star systems. And humans? Humans had only discovered faster-than-light travel 80 years ago. They were babies in galactic terms. The assembly hall was built to impress and intimidate. The ceiling rose so high that clouds actually formed near the top. Floating platforms carried delegates from dozens of worlds, each species more strange and alien than the last. At the center of it all sat High Arbiter Vaughn, the leader of the council. His species, the Tyranni, had smooth blue skin and eyes that never blinked. He watched Yuna approach with the look of someone waiting for a pet to perform a trick. Yuna reached the speaking platform and stood before the assembly. She took a slow breath. Back on Earth, Admiral Taeho Park and Director Hannah Choi were watching through a secure feed. They had prepared for this moment for a very long time. Honored members of the Galactic Council, Yuna began. Her voice was calm and clear. I come before you today with a formal petition from the United Earth Government. We request that humanity be reclassified from a developing species to a sovereign species, with all the rights and responsibilities that status brings. A ripple of amusement passed through the chamber. Yuna ignored it and continued. In the 60 years since the protection treaties were signed, humanity has proven itself capable of responsible self-governance. We have terraformed 3 worlds. We have established peaceful colonies with populations in the hundreds of millions. Our scientists have contributed to galactic knowledge in fields ranging from medicine to quantum physics. We have followed every rule, met every requirement, and exceeded every expectation placed upon us. She paused and looked directly at High Arbiter Vaughn. Do you believe you've earned the right to stand as equals among the stars? For a long moment, silence filled the hall. Then Vaughn leaned forward, and something like a smile crossed his alien face. The council thanks the human delegation for their enthusiasm, he said. His voice dripped with false politeness. Your progress has been noted. However, the matter of species classification is not one we take lightly. Perhaps in another century or 2, we can revisit this discussion. Before Yuna could respond, another voice cut through the chamber. If I may speak, High Arbiter? It was Delegate Mara of the Keth Dominion. He was tall and thin, with gray skin and forearms that he spread wide as he addressed the assembly. His species had been part of the council for 6,000 years, and they had never let anyone forget it. I find it amusing, Mora said, that the humans believe themselves ready for sovereignty. He pressed a button on his platform, and a massive holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber. Images began to play. Wars, bombs falling on cities, soldiers fighting in trenches, nuclear explosions blooming like flowers of death. This is humanity, Mora continued. This is what they did to their own world before they even reached the stars. They burned their forests. They poisoned their oceans. They slaughtered each other by the millions over patches of dirt and differences in belief. More images appeared. Concentration camps. Mushroom clouds. Children crying in the rubble of destroyed homes. Now they come before us asking to be treated as equals. Mara laughed, and many in the chamber laughed with him. They cannot even live in peace with themselves. How can we trust them with the responsibilities of a sovereign species? They are unstable, dangerous, primitive. He turned to face Yuna directly, his forearms crossed over his chest. Go home, little human. Come back when your species has grown up. The chamber erupted in laughter. Hundreds of alien voices joined together in mockery. Yuna stood perfectly still, her face showing no emotion at all. Behind her, the other human delegates clenched their fists but said nothing. High Arbiter Vaughn raised a hand for silence. The council has heard the human petition, he announced. After careful consideration, the petition is denied. The protection treaties will remain in effect. Humanity will continue under the guidance and protection of elder species until such time as the Council deems them ready for greater responsibility. He waved a dismissive hand. This matter is closed. Yuna bowed slightly as protocol demanded. Then she turned and began walking toward the exit. Her delegation followed in silence. The laughter and whispers continued all around them. She was almost at the door. When she stopped, the chamber gradually fell quiet. Everyone watched the small human woman standing at the threshold, her back still turned to them. When Yuna spoke, her voice was soft, but somehow it carried to every corner of the massive hall. "You signed those treaties 60 years ago," she said. "You told us they were for our protection, to keep us safe while we grew, to guide us toward a better future. Have you ever stopped to consider that perhaps those treaties were never meant to protect us at all?" High Arbiter Vaughn frowned. "What do you mean by that, Ambassador?" Yuna turned her head slightly, just enough to look back over her shoulder. Her eyes met Vaughn's across the vast chamber. "I mean that perhaps you should ask yourselves a question," she said quietly. "All these years you have believed the treaties protected humanity from the dangers of the galaxy. But what if you had it backwards? What if the treaties were actually protecting the galaxy from humanity?" For just a moment, something flickered in Vaughn's eyes. It might have been confusion. It might have been the first tiny seed of doubt. Then Mara laughed again, loud and harsh, and the moment passed. "Threats from a species that cannot even control its own population growth," he sneered. "How terrifying." The chamber laughed once more. Yuna said nothing else. She simply walked through the doors and disappeared from sight. In the silence that followed her departure, High Arbiter Vaughn found himself staring at the empty doorway. A strange feeling had settled in his chest. He did not recognize it at first. It had been a very long time since anyone had made him feel uneasy. He pushed the feeling aside and called for the next order of business. The galaxy had important matters to discuss. The humans were irrelevant. They always had been. 3 weeks later, he would remember this moment. He would remember the small human woman and her quiet warning. And he would finally understand what that strange feeling had been. It was the first whisper of fear. The colony world of Nu. Hushed. Busan was beautiful in the morning light. Twin suns rose over green hills and silver cities, casting long shadows across farms and forests that humans had built with their own hands over 3 decades. 2 million people lived there. Families, children, ordinary people living ordinary lives. Far from the politics of the Galactic Council, they never saw the attack coming. The Keth. Warships dropped out of hyperspace at dawn. 12 heavy cruisers, bristling with weapons, descended on the peaceful world like wolves on sheep. They did not send warnings. They did not make demands. They simply began firing. The first city to fall was Hanam, a coastal settlement of 50,000 people. Plasma fire rained from the sky, turning buildings to ash and streets to rivers of molten glass. People ran screaming through the chaos, but there was nowhere to run. The Keth had done this many times before to developing species. They knew exactly how to maximize terror. Delegate Mora had ordered the attack personally. He called it a lesson in humility for the humans who had dared to speak of equality. The protection treaties technically forbade such aggression. But the Keth had learned long ago that the Council never punished elder species for disciplining younger ones. High Arbiter Vaughn would look the other way, as he always did. By noon, 3 cities were burning. The death toll climbed past 100,000 and kept rising. Distress signals flooded every frequency. Desperate pleas for help that seemed to vanish into the void of space. Then something strange happened. The Keth detected a hyperspace signature. A single vessel dropped out of faster-than-light travel less than 10,000 kilometers away. It was a human warship called the Silent Fury, commanded by Captain Jun Lee. The Keth commander laughed when he saw it on his sensors. 1 ship? Against 12? The humans were even more foolish than he had thought. According to the protection treaties, human warships were limited in size and firepower. This vessel should be no threat at all. "Destroy it," he ordered casually. Then continue the bombardment. 6 Keth cruisers turned their weapons toward the silent fury. They fired, they missed. The human ship moved in ways that should have been impossible. It twisted and spun through space like a living thing, dodging plasma blasts that should have torn it apart. Before the Keth could fire again, the silent fury returned fire. The lead Keth cruiser exploded in a ball of white light. Captain Jun Lee sat in his command chair, his face calm and focused. Around him, his crew worked with perfect precision. They had trained for this moment their entire lives. Every simula, tie-on, every drill, every sleepless night had led to this. Target the second cruiser, Jun said quietly. Fire. Another explosion lit up the darkness of space. The Keth commander stared at his displays in disbelief. The human ship was using weapons that did not exist in any database. It was moving faster than any vessel its size should be able to move. And it was cutting through his fleet like they were made of paper. All ships, concentrate fire. He screamed. Destroy that thing. The remaining cruisers turned away from New Busan and focused everything they had on the silent fury. Hundreds of plasma. Bolts streaked through space, enough firepower to crack a small moon. The human ship simply was not there when they arrived, Captain. Jun Lee smiled slightly. They still don't understand, he murmured to himself. We've been watching them for 60 years. We know exactly how they fight. And we've had 6 decades to figure out how to beat them. For minutes after it began, the battle was over. All 12 Keth cruisers had been destroyed. The silent fury had not suffered a single hit. Jun opened a channel to the surface of New Busan. This is Captain Lee of the United Earth Fleet. The enemy has been neutralized. Medical ships are on the way. Hold on. Help is coming. Across the burning colony. Survivors looked up at the sky and wept with relief. 12 hours later, Director Hannah Choi stood before a camera in a secure facility on Earth. She was a small woman with gray streaks in her black hair and eyes that missed nothing. Behind her, a massive display showed the flag of United Earth. Her message was broadcast on every frequency in the galaxy. Citizens of the Galactic Council, she began. Her voice was cold and precise. At 0600 hours Earth Standard Time, forces of the Keth Dominion launched an unprovoked attack on the human colony world of New Busan. Over 170,000 civilians were killed in the initial assault. Hospitals were targeted. Schools were destroyed. Children were murdered in their homes. She paused to let the words sink in. This attack was a clear violation of the protection treaties that have governed our relationship with the Council for 60 years. Article 7 of those treaties states clearly that any military aggression against a protected species by a Council member voids all treaty obligations, immediately and permanently. Hannah's eyes seemed to look through the camera and into the souls of everyone. Watching, the Keth Dominion has broken the treaties. Therefore, as of this moment, humanity is no longer bound by any restriction those treaties imposed. All limitations on our fleet size are void. All restrictions on weapon development are void. All requirements for Council oversight are void. She leaned forward slightly. The treaties are gone. And you should know that we have been preparing for this day for a very, very long time. Across the galaxy, military commanders scrambled to access classified files on humanity. What they found made their blood freeze in their veins. The protection treaties had limited humanity to a defensive fleet of 50 small warships. According to all intelligence reports, that was exactly what they had. But the intelligence reports were wrong. The humans had built shipyards in places no one thought to look, hidden facilities in asteroid fields, secret bases in the atmosphere of gas giants, construction yards in dimensions that other species did not even know existed. Admiral Tejo Park did not command 50 ships. He commanded 5,000, and they had been waiting, silent and hidden, for exactly this moment. High Arbiter Vaughn received the reports in his private chamber. His hands trembled as he read them. 5,000 warships, weapons that defied known physics. technology decades ahead of anything the Council possessed. For 60 years, the galaxy had laughed at humanity. For 60 years, they had called them primitive, unstable, dangerous children who needed to be controlled. And for 60 years, the humans had smiled politely, bowed their heads, and quietly built an armada capable of conquering the galaxy. Vaughn thought of Ambassador Yuna. Kim standing in the assembly hall. He remembered her quiet question. What if the treaties were actually protecting the galaxy from humanity? Now he understood. The humans had never needed protection. They had been waiting, watching, learning, and now the chains were broken. Vaughn reached for his communications device with shaking hands. He needed to call an emergency session of the Council. He needed to organize a response. He needed to do something. But deep in his heart, he already knew the truth. It was too late. The galaxy had awakened something it could not put back to sleep. And humanity was finally ready to show the universe what it was truly capable of. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was the largest in 300 years. Every species sent their highest officials. Every seat was filled. Fear hung in the air like smoke, thick enough to taste. Scholar Etha moved slowly to the speaking platform. She was ancient even by the standards of her long-lived species. Her purple scales faded with age, her movements careful and deliberate. She had been one of the researchers who studied humanity during First Contact 60 years ago. She had tried to warn the Council then. No one had listened. Perhaps they would listen now. I have been asked to explain what we are facing, Etha began. Her voice was soft, but every being in the chamber heard her clearly. Most of you believe you understand humanity. You are wrong. What you think you know is only what they wanted you to see. She pressed a control, and images appeared in the air above her. Humans working in primitive laboratories. Humans fighting wars with crude weapons. Humans dying by the millions from diseases and disasters. When we first discovered humanity 80 years ago, they had just invented faster-than-light travel, a remarkable achievement for such a young species, but not unique. Many civilizations reached that point. Etha paused. What was unique was what we found when we studied their history. New images appeared. Nuclear explosions. Cities in ruins. Armies clashing across continents. Before they reached the stars, humans fought 3 interplanetary wars among themselves. They developed weapons capable of destroying entire planets. They created artificial intelligences, modified their own genetics, and split the atom all within a few centuries of discovering electricity. A murmur ran through the assembly. Those technologies usually took thousands of years to develop. We asked ourselves how this was possible. Etha continued. How could such a young, short-lived species advance so quickly? The answer was disturbing. She looked out at the assembled delegates. Humans do not advance despite their conflicts. They advance because of them. Their wars drive their innovation. Their competition pushes them forward. Their fear of each other forces them to create better weapons, better technology, better strategies. While our species took 10,000 years to develop fusion power, humans did it in less than 200 because they were racing to build bigger bombs to drop on each other. High Arbiter Vaughn shifted uncomfortably in his seat. That is precisely why we created the protection treaties, he said. To contain their dangerous tendencies? Yes, Etha agreed. But you misunderstand what we truly contained. She waved her hand, and new data appeared. In the past 60 years under the treaties, human technological advancement has slowed to a crawl. At least, that is what our intelligence agencies reported. But those reports were wrong. She pulled up images of hidden shipyards, secret research facilities, weapons tests conducted in the depths of uninhabited space. The humans never stopped advancing. They simply learned to hide it from us. Every restriction we placed on them, they found ways around. Every inspector we sent, they deceived. They smiled at us, agreed to our terms, and built their true fleet in the shadows. Commander Drell of the Vaxen Empire stood up. His people were warriors, proud and strong. They had never lost a war. How many ships do they truly have? He demanded. Our current estimates suggest approximately 5,000 combat vessels, Etha replied. but that number is likely outdated. The humans build quickly when motivated. Drell's face twisted with anger. Then we must strike now, before they grow stronger. A united fleet from all council species could still overwhelm them. Aitha shook her head slowly. I do not think you understand what we are dealing with, Commander. She brought up a new display. This is an analysis of human military doctrine. The screen showed battle formations, tactical diagrams, strategic maps covered in arrows and symbols. Most species fight wars the same way, Aitha explained. We seek decisive battles. We try to destroy the enemy's main force in a single great conflict. Humans do not think this way. They wage war on every level simultaneously. Military, economic, psychological, cultural. They attack supply lines, spread propaganda, destabilize governments, and turn enemies against each other. They study their opponents obsessively, looking for weaknesses no one else would think to exploit. She turned to face Drell directly. Your species, the Vaxen, are known for your honor in battle. You fight face to face, openly and bravely. Humans will not do this. They will find the thing you value most and threaten it. They will make you choose between victory and something you cannot bear to lose. And while you hesitate, they will strike from a direction you never expected. Drell sat down slowly, his confidence visibly shaken. There is something else you must understand, Aitha continued. Something more important than their weapons or their tactics. She paused, gathering her thoughts. Humans have short lives. The average human lives only 80 to 100 years. To us, that seems like nothing. We assumed their brief existence made them impatient, emotional, easily distracted. We were wrong. She looked around the chamber with ancient, knowing eyes. Their short lives do not make them weak. Their short lives make them relentless. Every human knows that they will die. They cannot wait for problems to solve themselves. They cannot hope that time will bring better circumstances. They must act. They must build. They must achieve. The same urgency that drove them to tear their own world apart also drives them to create wonders we cannot match. Aitha walked to the edge of the platform, her voice growing heavier. And there is one more thing. Humans have long memories. Not individually, their lives are too short for that. But as a species, they record everything. They tell stories to their children about wrongs done to their ancestors 1,000 years ago. They build monuments to their dead. They hold grudges across generations. She pointed toward the empty seats where the Keth delegation usually sat. They had fled after the attack, fearing human retaliation. The Keth killed 170,000 humans on New Busan. The humans will not forget this. Not in a year. Not in a century. Not ever. And they will make sure that anyone who considers harming them in the future remembers what happened to the Keth. As if summoned by her words, alarms suddenly blared throughout the station. Displays flickered to life, showing an urgent report from the Keth border regions. Human ground forces had landed on 3 Keth worlds. General Sunjo Beek, commander of Earth's ground armies, had not waited for the council to respond. He had not asked for permission. The Keth had killed humans, and now humans were coming for the Keth. The invasion footage was terrifying. Human soldiers in advanced armor moved through Keth cities with brutal efficiency. They targeted military installations, government buildings, and anything connected to the attack on New Busan. Civilian areas were left untouched. But the message was clear. You hurt us. Now we hurt you. 3 days later, the first Keth world surrendered. By the end of the week, all 3 were under human control. The conquest had taken 6 days. In the council chamber, silence reigned. Delegates who had laughed at humanity 3 weeks ago now sat frozen in their seats. High Arbiter Vaughn's face had gone pale. Commander Drell stared at the display with something new in his eyes. It might have been respect. It might have been terror. Scholar Aitha watched them all and felt a deep, terrible sadness. She had tried to warn them. She had tried to explain what humanity truly was. But no one had wanted to listen to an old scholar talking about a primitive species from a backwater planet. Now they understood. Now they were afraid, and fear. Ethan knew. Was only the beginning of wisdom. High Arbiter Vaughn stood before the council and tried to project confidence he did not feel. The chamber was in chaos. Delegates shouted over each other, their voices mixing into a wall of noise and fear. 3 Keth worlds had fallen. The protection treaties were void. In humanity, the species they had mocked for 60 years, was showing the galaxy what it truly meant to make them angry. "We must respond with force," Vaughn declared, raising his hands for silence. "A unified fleet from all council species will demonstrate that. Aggression against the galactic community will not be tolerated. The humans may have hidden strength, but they cannot stand against all of us together." He looked around the chamber, expecting support. What he found instead made his stomach turn cold. Half the delegates would not meet his eyes. Many seats were empty species who had already fled back to their home systems. And among those who remained, he saw something he had never seen before: division. "The Virati Collective does not believe military action is wise," announced the Virati delegate, a crystalline being whose voice chimed like bells. "Perhaps if we had acted when the humans first petitioned for equality, this could have been avoided." "Now we must seek peace," the Thorns agree, added another delegate. The humans were provoked. "We should negotiate, not fight, cowards," shouted a representative from the Keth Dominion. "You would abandon us to these monsters?" "Your people started this war," the Virati delegate replied coldly. "Do not expect us to die for your mistakes." The argument exploded into full-scale shouting. Vaughn tried to restore order, but no one was listening. The council that had ruled the galaxy for millennia was tearing itself apart. Then the main doors opened. Ambassador Yuna Kim walked in, and the chamber fell silent. She was not alone. Beside her walked Admiral Teho Park, his uniform crisp and his face unreadable. Behind them came representatives from 12 other species, small civilizations that had been classified as developing, just like humanity. They had been ignored and mistreated for centuries. Now they walked with their heads high, standing with the humans, and behind them all. Visible through the windows of the station hung something that made every being in the chamber stop breathing. A ship. But not just any ship. It was enormous, larger than anything the galaxy had ever seen. Its dark hull seemed to swallow light, and weapons bristled from every surface like the spines of some ancient predator. The name was painted in white letters along its side: Eternal Dawn. "Thank you for receiving us," Yuna said, her voice calm and pleasant. She walked to the speaking platform as if she owned it. "I believe we have some things to discuss." Vaughn found his voice. "You dare bring weapons into council space? This is a neutral zone." "The Keth brought weapons to New Busan," Yuna replied simply. "A civilian colony was a neutral zone too. Apparently the rules have changed." She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "We are simply adapting to the new reality." Admiral Teho stepped forward. He was older than Yuna, with gray hair and the weathered face of a man who had seen too many battles. But his eyes were sharp and steady. "Let me be clear about our position," he said. "Humanity did not want this war. We spent 60 years following your rules, accepting your insults, and waiting patiently for the equality we deserved. We came to you with open hands, asking only to be treated as partners. You laughed at us. And when the Keth murdered our people, your council did nothing." He paused, letting the silence stretch. "So now we will do what we should have done decades ago. We will ensure our own safety, with or without your cooperation." High Arbiter Vaughn's voice cracked as he spoke. "What do you want?" Yuna produced a document and held it up for all to see. "These are our terms. First, the protection treaties are permanently void. Humanity will be recognized as a sovereign species with full rights. Second, the Keth Dominion will surrender the 3 conquered worlds and pay reparations for the attack on New Busan. Third, the Council will be reformed. No more classifications of developing species. No more protection that is really control. Equal treatment for all civilizations, regardless of age." "Impossible," Vaughn sputtered. "You cannot simply rewrite the foundations of galactic law." "We can," Admiral Teho said. "And to demonstrate why, I would like to show you something." He pressed a button on a small device in his hand. The windows of the chamber darkened. and holographic displays appeared showing star maps from across the galaxy. 17 points of light began to blink. Those are the locations of 17 warships identical to the Eternal Dawn. Tejo explained. Each one is positioned near a major population center of a council species. Each one carries enough firepower to destroy a planet. The chamber erupted in panic. Delegates screamed and ran for the exits. Others collapsed in their seats, too shocked to move. Tejo raised his hand. Please, calm yourselves. These ships are not there to attack anyone. They are there to ensure that no one attacks us. Think of them as a guarantee of mutual respect. This is madness, Vaughn whispered. This is tyranny. Director Hannah Choi stepped forward now. She had been standing quietly at the back, observing everything. Her voice was soft but carried icily through the chaos. Let me tell you what we did during the past 60 years, she said. While you watched our small, permitted fleet and congratulated yourselves on containing us, we studied you. We mapped every defense grid, analyzed every weapon system, and identified every weakness in your civilizations. We placed agents in your governments, your militaries, your intelligence services. We learned your languages, your cultures, your fears. She smiled slightly. The Vaxen pride themselves on their fleet formations. We know every formation you have ever used and have developed counters to all of them. The Taurani believe their homeworld is impenetrable. We have had sleeper agents in your capital city for 40 years. The Keth thought their military was the strongest in the sector. We destroyed 12 of their cruisers in 4 minutes. Hannah walked slowly across the platform, her eyes moving from delegate to delegate. You thought the treaties were keeping us contained? The truth is, the treaties gave us time. Time to prepare. Time to grow strong. Time to ensure that when this moment came, we would be ready for anything. She stopped and faced High Arbiter Vaughn directly. We are not here to conquer you. We are not here for revenge. We are here because we tried to be your partners and you refused. We tried to earn your respect and you gave us only contempt. So now we will not ask for equality. We will simply take it. And if anyone tries to stop us, they will discover exactly what humanity is capable of when we stop holding. Inji back. The silence that followed was absolute. Then, slowly, the Virati delegate rose from its seat. The Virati Collective accepts humanity's terms, it announced. We see no reason to fight a war we cannot win. One by one, other species followed. The Thorins, the Minal, the Geth. Species that had no love for Vaughn or the Old Council saw an opportunity and seized it. Within an hour, more than half the council had agreed to the human demands. Vaughn watched his power crumble around him. The empire he had built through centuries of manipulation and control was falling apart in a single afternoon. This is not over, he said, his voice barely a whisper. Admiral Tejo Park looked at him with something that might have been pity. Yes, High Arbiter. It is. The only question now is whether you will accept the new reality gracefully, or whether we will need to continue this demonstration. Outside the windows, the Eternal Dawn hung motionless in space, its weapons dark but ready. A silent promise of what would come if humanity's enemies refused to learn. Vaughn lowered his head. He had no choice left at all. The signing ceremony took place in the same Grand Assembly Hall where humanity had been mocked 3 months earlier. The irony was not lost on anyone. Delegate Mara of the Keth Dominion walked to the center platform with the slow steps of a broken man. His forearms hung limp at his sides, and his gray skin had taken on a sickly pale color. 3 months ago, he had laughed at Ambassador Yunakim and told her to go home. Now he was about to sign documents that would surrender 3 worlds and billions in reparations to the species he had tried to destroy. Yuna stood waiting for him, her face carefully neutral. She did not smile. She did not gloat. She simply handed him the stylus and watched as he signed his name to each document. When it was done, Mara looked up at her. His eyes were filled with hatred and fear and something else. Something that might have been understanding. You planned this from the beginning, he said quietly. The petition for sovereignty. You knew we would refuse. You knew someone would attack. You were waiting for us to give you an excuse." Yuna considered his words for a moment before responding. "We hoped for peace," she said honestly. "We would have preferred equality without bloodshed, but we prepared for the alternative. That is the human way. Hope for the best. Prepare for the worst." Mora shook his head slowly. "We never had a chance, did we? From the moment you signed those treaties, we were already defeated." "You defeated yourselves," Yuna replied, "with your arrogance, your cruelty, your certainty that you would always be stronger than everyone else." She leaned forward slightly. "Remember this moment. Delegate. Remember what it cost you to underestimate humanity. And make sure your children remember too." Mara said nothing more. He turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd of delegates who watched in silence. No one moved to comfort him. The Keith had no friends left. 2 weeks later, High Arbiter Vaughn was removed from power. Not by humans, but by his own people. The Tyranny Council voted unanimously to strip him of his title and exile him to a distant colony world. They hoped that sacrificing him would show humanity they were. Serious about reform, the new charter of the Galactic Council was written over the following months. Ambassador Yuna worked closely with representatives from dozens of species to create something better than what had existed before. No more classifications of developing species. No more protection that was really oppression. Equal voting rights for all civilizations. Disputes would be settled by law, not by whoever had the largest fleet or the oldest history. Humanity did not demand to lead the new council. They could have. Everyone knew they had the power to simply take control if they wanted. But that was not what they chose. "We don't want to rule the galaxy," Yuna explained in one of the negotiating sessions. "We want to compete fairly in it. Give us equal standing, equal opportunity, and equal treatment. That's all we've ever wanted." Some species did not believe her. They expected humanity to gradually take more and more power until they dominated everything. But years passed, and the humans kept their word. They built their economy, expanded their colonies, and developed technologies that amazed and sometimes frightened their neighbors. But they did not conquer. They did not oppress. They simply lived and grew and reached for the stars. On the bridge of the eternal dawn, Admiral Tejo Park stood looking out at the vast emptiness of space. The ship had returned to Earth orbit, its mission complete. 17 identical vessels were now stationed throughout the galaxy, silent guardians that ensured no one would forget the price of attacking humanity. General Sunjo Beek walked up to stand beside him. They had known each other for decades, had fought together in the colony wars, had built the hidden fleet in secret while the galaxy laughed at their people. Was it worth it? Songho asked. All those years of hiding, pretending to be weak, letting them insult us. Tejo was quiet for a long moment. They saw our short lives and thought we were weak, he said finally. They saw our conflicts and thought we were primitive. They never understood what those things really meant. He turned to face his old friend. We don't have time to waste, Sungho. Every generation of humans knows that their days are numbered. So every generation chooses to build something, to leave something behind for those who come after. That urgency, that desperate need to matter before we're gone, that's what they never understood. That's why we'll always surprise them. Songho nodded slowly. And now? What do we build now that the fighting is over? Tejo looked back at the stars. Now we build bridges instead of weapons. We prove that we can be partners, not just conquerors. The hard part isn't winning wars, old friend. The hard part is winning peace. On a distant world, in a quiet library filled with books and data crystals from 1,000 civilizations, scholar Etha added a new entry to her historical archives. She documented the rise of humanity, the fall of the old council, and the beginning of a new age for the galaxy. But at the end of her official report, she added a private note. It was meant only for future scholars, for those who would come after and try to understand what had happened. Do not make the mistake our generation made, she wrote. The humans are not cruel, but they are not forgiving. They were content to wait for 60 years while we laughed at them. They will wait 60 more if they must. and they will remember every slight, every insult, every injustice. The galaxy thought the treaties protected humanity from us. Now we know the truth. The treaties protected us from them. They are not our enemies. They do not wish to be our masters. But they will never again allow themselves to be our victims. Treat them with respect, and they will be the finest allies any species could hope for. Treat them with contempt, and your grandchildren will still be paying the price. May the next generation be wiser than we were. Ambassador Yuna Kim returned to Earth as a hero. Crowds gathered to cheer her at every spaceport. Politicians wanted to give her medals and titles. News networks begged for interviews. She refused them all instead. She went to a quiet park in the city where she had grown up. Director Hannah Choi met her there, and the two women sat together on a bench, watching children play in the distance. "You don't seem happy," Hannah observed. Yuna shook her head slowly. "This was only the beginning. We've made them respect us, but respect born from fear is fragile. It can turn to hatred in a moment. The real work starts now. Building trust, proving ourselves, showing the galaxy that we can be more than what they fear." She watched a small girl chase her brother across the grass, laughing with pure joy. "Do you think we can do it?" Hannah asked. Yuna was quiet for a long moment. Then she smiled, and for the first time since the crisis began, it was a real smile. "We're human," she said. "We've been doing the impossible since we climbed down from the trees. We crossed oceans in wooden boats. We cured diseases that killed millions. We split atoms and walked on other worlds. Every time someone told us something couldn't be done, we found a way." She looked up at the sky, where Earth's orbital stations glittered like diamonds against the darkness of space. "This is just one more step, one more impossible thing that will make possible because we refuse to accept anything else. That's who we are. That's what we do." Above them, the stars burned with ancient light. They had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations. They had seen empires born and die. Now they would witness something new. Humanity had arrived. Not as children asking for permission. Not as victims begging for protection. But as equals, ready to take their place among the stars. The galaxy would never be the same. And somewhere, in the vast depths of space, the eternal dawn kept watch. A reminder of what humanity had built in secret. A promise of what they would build in the light. The new dawn had begun.